How many times have you heard the word server? It's a very common word used in tech, but a lot of people tend to get confused on what it actually refers to. You probably know that it is somewhat similar to a normal computer, but maybe you're unsure on what the differences are with a common desktop computer and why it deserves a different word. Today, we'll get a better understanding on what exactly a server is and how and why it is different from a computer. So let's check it out together. Alright, let's start with an example. You probably all know Netflix, the famous video streaming service. Let's think at how we generally interact with the service. When we go to their URL, netflix.com, we're asking Netflix to give us back their homepage with the login page. Once we send the login information, we ask the Netflix server to verify that we actually own that account. And if everything goes well, we will receive a list of available movies. You can think of this scenario as the one of a professor asking questions to a student during an exam. Our device is the professor asking Netflix for the login page or the list of movies. And Netflix is the student who's supposed to correctly answer our question. So this framework of student-professor, which of course is just a metaphor, but it's actually called in the real tech world server-client. And the idea is that a server will always be ready to respond to the client's request. So in our case, our device will act as a client, and Netflix will act as the server, always ready to respond to our request. As you can see, the main point of a server is its role in the overall architecture. It doesn't really matter what piece of hardware it is, but the definition assumes that its role consists in handling and processing requests from a client. As long as a piece of hardware can fulfill this role, then it can be technically called a server. So you might be wondering, can my computer be a server? The answer is yes. Technically, you could use your own desktop or potentially even your own phone. Assume you connect it to your public IP address, like myfirstwebsite.com, and you write a small piece of software that returns a picture of your lovely dog to anyone that goes to that homepage. Then you'll be able to serve some content for anyone that requests it. One important condition is that you have to leave your computer on all the time and also connect it to the internet, so it's ready to respond to all the clients requesting for the picture of your dog. Unfortunately, there are two problems with this approach though. The first one is that your desktop hardware is not optimized for this role. This means that things can become very slow, especially if in order to handle the requests, you need to perform several calculations, and that requires a lot of CPU power. That is why, generally, servers are built using dedicated pieces of hardware that are optimized for this purpose. And these pieces of hardware are what people generally refer to servers. Also, the second problem is that even the software running on your computer is not optimized for this role. Your operating system might be able to handle a couple of requests at the same time, but if you truly are Netflix, you might receive a ton of requests simultaneously, and you need a dedicated piece of software that is able to properly handle this. That is why the hardware used by this company is incredibly expensive and optimized for performance. It has to be energy efficient too, since it will be running non-stop. And that's the reason sometimes people tend to refer to servers as those optimized machines. But in fact, as we mentioned before, the word server has a much broader meaning, and it's not really about a specific piece of hardware or a brand or a company-made piece of hardware, but it is about the role of a component in a server-client architecture. This was everything for this introduction on the servers. Please subscribe to the channel if you want to be up to date with all the newest video, and for sure, if you have any questions or doubts, please ask them in the comment section below.